My bank account used to tell a very embarrassing secret every single month. By the 25th, it was basically empty. I was completely trapped in a cycle of emotional spending, buying things I didn't need just to feel a tiny blip of happiness, which was always followed by days and days of guilt. But I broke free. It all came down to 3 simple, powerful rules that I'm going to share with you today. So these are the exact rules that took me from being constantly broke to actually building real wealth. And this wasn't about harsh restrictions. It wasn't about cutting back and getting rid of the lattes. It was about taking back my power. So if you ever felt that sick pit in your stomach after unplanned spending, completely guilty, then I know this is going to help you too. And before we get started, I want to invite you to a 7-day conscious spending challenge. This isn't about criticizing or shaming yourself. It's about connecting with your money. It's about dating money. It's about knowing exactly what makes you excited, what hits that dopamine high on the meter scale so that you can feel that feeling every time you spend money. Join today at idatemoney.com/smellthemoney. The link is in the show notes. And you will discover $500 extra or more in your wallet. Want to pay your raise? Join the smell of money. So the number one problem for years that I had with my relationship with money was toxic. It was a cycle of shame and guilt. It was this classic emotional spending of I had a tough day at work, the kids were driving me crazy, I didn't like my husband, I felt like I was working and never relaxing and enjoying. And it wasn't like go home from a tough day, take a relaxing bath, or calling a friend. For me, it meant opening up my laptop, filling up that virtual cart, and then loneliness wasn't a signal to reach out. It was a reason to buy a new outfit that I thought would magically make me feel more confident, more empowered, more like, I'm making all this money. Yeah, I deserve to spend it on myself. So each click of the buy now button was a tiny, fleeting burst of dopamine that masked the anxiety or sadness underneath. But that high always wore off when I let it, because I literally got into shopping sprees, especially around the holidays, every single day. The packages would show up and the excitement would die in minutes. And I'd look at the box and I'd be like, yeah, that came great. And instead, I'd be guilt-ridden. I'd be full of guilt. I was afraid to talk about my purchases, or I'd conveniently forget about the charges until the credit card statement arrived. And I opened it, I'd be like, what? I spent that much money? That's crazy. But what killed me was the interest. That number was terrifying. And it was an exhausting performance, but yet I couldn't stop and I knew better because I've been doing finances and insurance since 1987. What was wrong with me? And this was the continuous question. Studies show that compulsive buying affects nearly 6% of the US population. While it's not yet an official disorder in the DMS-5, it is recognized as a serious impulse control problem that can cause overwhelming debt and psychological distress. The worst part wasn't just the debt, which was bad enough. It was the feeling of being totally out of control. I was living paycheck to paycheck, not because I didn't earn enough, not because I didn't have enough income coming in, but because my feelings had my wallet in a chokehold. I'd have to turn down dinner with friends, not because I didn't want to go, but because I didn't want to spend the money. I had spent so much money on impulse buys that I had nothing left to give. And I vividly remember the shame of my card being declined trying to buy groceries, putting things back on the shelf because I didn't have enough money to cover it, all because I had spent it elsewhere. I couldn't even remember some of the things that I bought, and they would arrive. I'd be like, when did I get that? And what was I doing? Ultimately, I was betraying my future self for a quick hit of present comfort. And I was building a life filled with clutter I hated and financial stress I couldn't escape. So what did I believe my solution was? Bring in more money. I know when I make more money, then my problem will be solved. And I know this is a story that you're telling yourself too, because I've heard it 1,000 times. And you get afraid and you think, oh, I need Lisa's help, but she might not be a good fit because I have an accountant, I have CPA. Your accountant and your CPA doesn't care about your emotional spending problem. I do all my own taxes. I have my own accountant, my own bookkeeper. I was a treasurer for several years, and I could manage everybody else's money and make it multiply triple the amount. And I looked at my own and I thought, why can't I do the same thing for myself? But I was doing it. I wasn't paying attention to where my money was going, and therefore it didn't feel or look like I was managing my money appropriately. So what I did after I filed for bankruptcy at 22 years old with $32,000 of debt is I set everything on auto pay, my investments, my savings, my retirement, all my bills. And everything that was left over was like my spending money, my cash. But I never had a separate money bucket for fun money, so I felt deprived. So every time I would look at my bank account, I would see the net available. Wouldn't pay attention to the investment retirements because who cares? The future was so far off before I could even touch those. So what was my turning point? My rock bottom wasn't a big dramatic movie moment. It was a slow crushing realization. In my late 20s, looking at my financial future and seeing absolutely nothing. Research actually shows that shopping addiction often starts in the late teens or early 20s, with the mean age of onset being around 30. And I tell you, something happens at 40. So I was right in that peak risk period. And my savings account was a joke, constantly being drained to cover my credit card. And I would tell myself, oh, I'm saving for an emergency. And then an emergency would happen. Paying off your credit card is not an emergency. I had dreams. I wrote them down. I had my vision board. I wanted to travel. I wanted to live at the beach. I wanted to retire early. I just wanted to feel secure. I wanted to be able to spend money without telling myself no. I wanted to be rich, not just look rich and feel rich, but actually have the money so that I can do what I desired to do. But my actions were making those dreams impossible. And maybe this sounds like you too. You have that vision board, like, oh, when my business takes off, I'm going to do A, B, and C. But then your business never takes off. This actually affects how you bring in money because of your energy. You're bringing out into the field saying, I'm worth $10,000 clients, but yet I won't invest $10,000. Contradicting, right? So when you think about your core values, aligning that with your conscious and your unconscious so that you can be on the same page and think about, how do I want my money to be spent? This is why the conscious spending challenge is so important. So what we're doing, what I did in the past, wasn't just costing me money. It was costing me the life that I wanted. Tossing and turning at night, sleepless nights, thinking, what can I do differently? Why haven't I reached my goals yet? So the final straw for me was a small, unexpected car repair. It wasn't a huge expense, but it was enough that I had to put it on a high-interest credit card. I sat in my car after leaving the mechanic and just felt this profound hopelessness. Here I was, a grown adult with a decent job, 3 jobs, and I couldn't handle one minor emergency. Something just shifted. I was done with the shame, the anxiety. I was done letting my fleeting emotions run my life. I was a single parent. I had to get it together, and I wanted to set a good example for my son. I decided I wasn't going to be a victim of my own impulses anymore. I knew I had to do more than just try harder. I knew I had to do more than just budget. I needed a system, a real non-negotiable rules. So the solution are the 3 rules that I'm about to show you. And when you implement the system, this is when you're going to see change. And the first step to implementing the system is to get out of your head. Stop trying to justify the excuses that you're coming up with as to why you're not investing. I went on a research deep dive into the psychology of spending and habit formation. And from everything I learned, I built this 3-part framework and have implemented it since 2019. And these aren't just tips. They're the rules that completely rewired my brain and my bank account. And I have to tell you, you have to implement them on the daily because we all go back to our old patterns. It's like the teeth. When you get them fixed with braces, if you don't wear that retainer, they're going to shift back. They're going to remember, and then they'll get crooked worse than they were the first time. Trust me, I know that too. I had braces twice. Rule number 1, the 48-hour waiting period. The first and most powerful rule was a mandatory waiting period for any non-essential purchase. Impulse buys thrive on that false sense of urgency that marketers and our own emotions create. This rule smashes that cycle. Anytime I wanted to buy something that wasn't a true necessity, I had to put it on the 48-hour list. I do this with all the shiny objects, the coaching programs, the impulse buys, oh, look at these great pair of shoes or boots. This was revolutionary. That desperate, I need it now feeling would almost always disappear within 24 hours. That cooling off period lets your logical brain catch up to your emotional brain. And when you look at that list 2 days later and think, another shiny object, another course, another gray sweater, really? Where would I even put that? More often than not, the desire had totally evaporated. I realized I didn't want that thing. I wanted the feeling I thought buying the thing would give me. For me, this single rule eliminated 80% of my impulse spending overnight. And especially now with online shopping making up over 16% of all retail sales, creating that buffer is more important than ever. You give yourself space to see that purchase won't actually solve the stress of boredom that triggered the urge in the first place. What can you do instead to trigger that dopamine hit? Take care of yourself, dance, enjoy a homemade latte, something simple, but really think, when you're buying something, is it for you now, for your future self? How is it going to increase your ROI? Just asking those right questions, taking a breath, using the aromatherapy. This is what we do. We practice in the smell of money, calming that nervous system so that you can make wise decisions that are aligned with the lifestyle that you desire. Rule number 2 is the cash-only system for fun money. This second rule was one that made my spending painfully real. I switched to a strict cash-only system for all my discretionary buys. I set aside 10% for fun money. I can use this money however I want, but I realized having it in cash made me really think, how do I want to spend my fun money? And I got to enjoy it with no guilt. This money wasn't just for all my wants, coffees, new clothes, takeout, hobbies, whatever. After the start of each month, I would allot 10%. And the one rule was it had to be spent by the end of the month. This is me enjoying my hard-earned money. Instead of waiting until the leftovers, I got to enjoy my first fruits. And then when I went to go withdraw the money and see, wow, look at all the money I earned. This is only 10% of that money, and I get to enjoy it exactly how I want. And once it was gone, it was gone. Putting it in an envelope and marking on that envelope exactly what I wanted to have fun with, exactly what I wanted to spend it on, that I considered fun, was a game changer because I could quickly pull it out and say, yep, that's my fun money. And I actually found a wallet that has separate compartments that you can mark as separate accounts. So I would put a little sticky note in there with the tab and the money would go right in there. Beautiful. When I went to Universal Epic end of the month last November, this past month, and spent my fun money that way. And it was wonderful. And I got my son was like, $40 for a dozen donuts. Yep. That's my fun money. And I got to share it with people I love. So it's amazing how different it feels to hand over a crisp $20 bill versus tapping a piece of plastic. When you hand over physical cash, you see your fun money for the month literally getting smaller and you're enjoying it, and it forces you to be more intentional with how you want to spend your money. And you can start asking yourself, is this really what I want to do for fun? Think about that. It really helps you destroy the abstract, disconnected nature of digital payments, and you can't mindlessly tap and disassociate from the cost. And if you're someone who's afraid to carry cash, you might get robbed. I know, I was like that for a long time. Get a dedicated debit card. I use Fidelity account. They have a checking account that earns interest, and that's my fun money card. So any money that's deposited onto that account, I take with me, I swap, and voila, I have my fun money as cash on a card. So thinking about, this is the rule that finally put me back in the driver's seat. And rule number 3 is to identify the why and find a free replacement. This last rule gets to the root of the problem. And once you get to the root of the problem, you've nailed it. Of course, you might find more problems, and that's what we do in the Wealth Accelerator. And you can activate your wealth by joining the Smell of Money, getting into that 7-day conscious spending challenge. So my spending wasn't a money problem, and it took me years to figure this out. It was a feelings problem. Research confirms that shopping is often a way to cope with negative emotions like stress, sadness, or inadequacy. And as a divorced mompreneur, the underlying thought might be, I'm a failure. I couldn't make my marriage work. My family is broken. I know as a single mom, I had a lot of those thoughts and feelings, and I thought, I'm not good enough. I'm ugly. Nobody's ever going to want me. I'm too much of a bad person to make it with somebody else, to have a partner that loves and respects me. So my third rule was every time I felt the urge to shop, I had to identify the emotion driving it and then do a free activity to address that feeling instead. I started a simple journal. Before putting something on my 48-hour list, I'd jot down what I was feeling in that moment. The patterns were so obvious, it was almost comical. Feeling stressed? The urge to shop was a call for relief. My new rule, instead of browsing online, go for a walk or do a 10-minute meditation. Replacing the shopping high with natural endorphins from exercise is a game changer. Feeling bored? The urge to shop was a hunt for entertainment. Instead of scrolling new arrivals, I'd go to the library, listen to a podcast, declutter a drawer, or try a new recipe with stuff I already had. Feeling inadequate after scrolling social media? A classic trigger for comparison-fueled spending. The replacement? Immediately close the app and call a friend or a family member for some genuine connection. Creating this instead of shopping list was about building a new toolkit of healthy coping mechanisms. Shopping had become my default fix for every bad feeling. By consciously choosing a healthier action, I broke that connection. I learned that a walk eased my stress away more than a new pair of shoes ever could. And a call with my family member or one of my kids brought more real joy than any add to cart moment. This is the rule that truly cured the addiction because it healed the wound underneath. It got to the root problem. So the after picture, putting these rules into practice wasn't an overnight fix, but within a few months, the change was undeniable. For the first time in my adult life, I ended the month with money left in my account. Let me tell you, that feeling was more satisfying than any purchase I had ever made. The constant low-grade hum of financial anxiety that had been the soundtrack of my life finally started to fade. Today, my life looks completely different, and I have a healthy emergency fund, which means an unexpected car repair is an inconvenience, not a full-blown crisis. I'm actively saving and investing for my future, and I get to help my kids. I'm taking trips I used to only dream about. That mountain of credit card debt that caused me so much shame is gone. But the biggest change isn't financial, it's emotional. I don't feel that compulsive pull anymore. I can walk through a mall or see an online ad and feel nothing but indifference. I found real confidence not in the things I own, but in the self-control I built. The happiness I was chasing in those packages was just a cheap imitation of the deep sense of peace and security I have now. I finally feel like I'm in charge of my own life. Breaking free from my shopping addiction came down to these 3 rules. Use a 48-hour waiting period to kill the impulse, switch to a cash-only system to make spending real, and identify your emotional triggers to find healthier ways to cope. These rules weren't about depriving myself. They were about living with intention and taking my power back. They gave me back my financial freedom and, more importantly, my peace of mind. If you're struggling with this, please know that you're not alone. And you absolutely have the power to change it. It doesn't matter if you have multiple 6, 7 figures coming in. If you're somebody that keeps telling yourself, when I make more money, then stop. Implement these 3 rules. It starts with one small decision at a time. I want to hear from you. I want you to share your spending habit. What's one spending habit that you're trying to kick, or a rule that's helped you on your journey? Share it in the comments below. And if this has helped you, be sure to subscribe. Every Wednesday, I release a new video, and share this with the mompreneur that you know could really use this boost. And join the Conscious Spending Challenge at visit idatemoney.com/thesmellofmoney and start your 7-day conscious spending plan today. You can find up to $500. Build a community of support right there. There's wealth activation codes to start the money flowing, and the stories are so powerful that help you take back control. when you implement these 3 rules, along with a 7-day conscious spending challenge, your income's going to increase. Money is going to overflow. And your relationship with money is going to be dynamic. You'll really, truly start to be partners and build the life that you desire so that you can feel rich and be rich. Because remember, it doesn't matter how much money you have, it's what you do with it.